Open the door covering the SIM card slot. Using your finger or a tool, push the SIM card inward to release it. Pull the SIM card from the slot. Be sure to close the SIM card door if you are not reinstalling a card. Open the SIM card door. Push the SIM card into the slot until it is secure in place. Then, close the door. Slide the bottom cover latch to the unlocked position, and then remove the bottom cover. Align the tabs on the bottom cover with the system base. Press firmly along the edges to secure the cover in place. Detach the battery pack connector. Remove the 5 retaining screws. Using the battery pack pull tab, lift up and remove the battery pack. Lower the battery pack onto the bottom frame and line up the screw holes. Install the 5 retaining screws. Attach the battery pack connector. Remove the 4 retaining screws that secure the hard disk drive. Lift the hard disk drive and detach it from the connector. Next, remove the 4 retaining screws. To finish, remove the bracket from the hard disk drive. Place the hard disk drive brackets on top of the hard disk drive. Install the 4 retaining screws. Attach the hard disk drive to the connector. Lower the hard disk drive into the bay. Install the 4 retaining screws. Remove the 1 retaining screw on the bottom of the system. Turn the system over and open the cover. Gently push the keyboard towards the rear of the system to detach it from the keyboard bezel. Lift the keyboard and then detach the keyboard connectors. Attach the keyboard connectors. Attach the keyboard so that the front edge of the keyboard is under the keyboard bezel. Gently press the keyboard until it snaps into position. Turn the system over and install the single retaining screw. Press the latches outward on either side of the memory module to release it. Gently pull the memory module to remove it. Repeat for any additional memory modules. Insert the notched end of the memory module into the socket. Press the memory module firmly until it snaps into place. Repeat for additional memory modules. Disconnect the two antenna cables. Remove the single retaining screw. Gently pull the wireless LAN card to remove it. Line up the notch on the wireless LAN card with the slot and gently push it until it is secure in place. Install the single retaining screw. Connect the two antenna cables. Remove the single retaining screw. Gently pull the SATA card to remove it. Line up the notch on the SATA card with the slot. Install the single retaining screw. Remove the electrical tape from the backup battery. Gently remove the backup battery from the system board. Disconnect the backup battery connector from the system board. Connect the backup battery connector to the system board. Securely place the backup battery on the system board. Place the electrical tape on the backup battery to secure it to the keyboard bezel. Remove the rubber feet. And then remove the two screws. Remove the 7 retaining screws under the bottom cover. Turn the system over and open the cover. Remove the 2 retaining screws from the top of the keyboard bezel. Detach the connectors from the system board. Carefully use your fingers or a tool to remove the keyboard bezel from the frame. Place the keyboard bezel on the system frame. Attach the connectors to the system board. Install the 2 retaining screws to the top of the keyboard bezel. Close the cover and turn the system over. Install the 7 retaining screws on the bottom. Install the 2 retaining screws under the rubber feet before replacing the feet. Release the speaker cable from the cable guides. Remove the 2 retaining screws. Remove the speaker assembly from the keyboard bezel. Lower the speaker assembly into position on the keyboard bezel. Install the 2 retaining screws. Route the cable through the cable guides. Remove the 2 retaining screws. Remove the media card reader from the keyboard bezel. Disconnect the media card reader connector. Connect the media card reader connector. Place the media card reader on the keyboard bezel. Install the 2 retaining screws. Disconnect the fingerprint reader connector. Remove the single retaining screw. Lift the fingerprint reader from the keyboard bezel and disconnect the cable. Place the fingerprint reader on the keyboard bezel. Install the single retaining screw. Connect the fingerprint connector and cable. Remove the 2 retaining screws. Disconnect the power button subcard connector. Remove the card from the keyboard bezel. Place the power button subcard on the keyboard bezel. Install the 2 retaining screws. Connect the power button subcard connector. Disconnect the hard disk drive cable from the system board. Release the cable from the cable guide. Remove the cable from the chassis. Connect the hard disk drive cable to the system board. Route the cable through the cable guides. Remove the 3 retaining screws from the right hinge. Remove the 2 retaining screws from the left hinge. Release the antenna connectors from the cable guides on the system board. Disconnect the integrated camera and microphone cable. Release the cable from the cable guides. Disconnect the LCD cable from the system board. Lift the LCD unit away from the system base. Lower the LCD unit onto the system base and align the hinges with their sockets. Install the 3 retaining screws to the right hinge. Install the 2 retaining screws to the left hinge. Route the antenna connectors through the cable guides on the system board. Connect the integrated camera and microphone cable and the LCD cable to the system board. Disconnect the DC-in subcard connector from the system board. Remove the single retaining screw. Lift the DC-in subcard out of its socket. Place the DC-in subcard in its socket. Install the single retaining screw. Connect the DC-in subcard connector to the system board. Disconnect the thermal fan assembly connector. Loosen the 6 screws in numerical order, starting with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Next, remove the 2 retaining screws. Lift the thermal fan assembly away from the system board. Place the thermal fan assembly on the system board, covering the GPU and microprocessor. Install the 2 retaining screws. Tighten these 6 screws in numerical order, starting with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Connect the thermal fan assembly connector and place the cable in the cable guides. Remove the 6 retaining screws. Pivot the system board to release it from the chassis, and then lift the system board away from the chassis. System board onto the chassis, making sure it is seated correctly. Install the 6 retaining screws. Tool and your fingers. Carefully unsnap the LCD bezel from the LCD unit and remove it. Place the LCD bezel on top of the LCD unit and firmly press along the edges of the bezel until it snaps in place. Remove the 6 retaining screws. Lift the LCD panel from the back cover. If necessary, detach the LCD cable. If necessary, connect the LCD cable and apply the adhesive tape firmly. Align the LCD panel with the back cover. Place the LCD cable in the left hinge. Secure the 6 retaining screws. Remove the integrated camera and microphone from the tabs on the back cover. Carefully disconnect the cable from the integrated camera and microphone. Connect the cable to the integrated camera and microphone. Place the integrated camera and microphone in the tabs on the back cover. Route the cable through the cable guide. Remove the 3 retaining screws on the right hinge. Next, remove the antenna cables from the hinge. Release the right hinge from the tabs on the back cover. Repeat for the left hinge. Place the right hinge along the tabs on the back cover. Secure the hinge with the 3 retaining screws. Repeat for the left hinge.